again like to thank all of you for coming today. Exciting events we've had here in the state of Oregon recently, making the international and national news. I watched it from a park close to where I lived. You know, it was kind of unique. Even though we had 99.2, it's still there. If you looked up there, even though you weren't supposed to, the sun still looked like a big round ball of light. And I'm going, wow, that is really powerful up there. But once in a lifetime event, and I hope each and every one of you had the opportunity to get out there and experience it. It was kind of fun just watching the Weather Channel afterwards as the moon raced across the rest of the country and all the different events that were taking place. Hopefully that brings our country together, and at least we didn't have to listen to the same type of news again for day after day. A little break in the headlines. So today we have the pleasure and honor of actually having two different topics that we're going to be discussing. One is the upcoming ballot measure for the new police facility and municipal court. Would be going up on the property that the city of Oregon City already owns, or yeah, I think the city already owns it, Mount Pleasant School, where I went to grade school actually. A long time ago, at least I believe so. But it's something that is certainly needed. Jim started out in law enforcement 19 years ago. Joined the Oregon City Police Department in 1999 and has been the police chief since 2013. So we're very fortunate to have Jim on board with us, and he's going to be sharing a little bit about the upcoming bond measure. I believe it's on September 17th? 19th. And I believe it's 16 million?
Yes.
Yeah, but at least it doesn't increase anyone's taxes and doesn't increase anybody's fees. So I'm sure you're going to give us more background information on that. And then we also have Wes Rogers with the Oregon City School District, who's the operations manager for the school district, has held a number of positions with the school over the years. And we have their lead architect, David Johnson, whose firm specializes in the design of kindergarten through 12th grade schools. That's all they do. They've been working on a facilities plan for the future of the Oregon City School District, and just looking at the task force, some of their recommendations in the capital improvement plan that has them touching every single one of the buildings that currently exist within the school district's curriculum over the next 20 years. Every single one, with the main focus being on the middle schools, Thorby, Gardner, and Ogden. Where I think you're going to see some real changes taking place there. So we'll let David and Wes kind of share some of their ideas that the advisory committee has come up with their recommendations. So with that being said, why don't we start out with you, Jim, and we'll go from there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can you give me, there we go. Yeah, I was thinking as he was talking some trivia about today. The two people speaking share at least two things in common. We both grew up in Montana, and we both paid money to have the boiler fixed at Mount Pleasant Middle School, or elementary school. I told him when we first sat down that he said, I haven't seen you in a long time. And I said, yeah, you gave us the keys to the middle school, or the Mount Pleasant, and I haven't heard from you since. And so anyway, so my name is Jim Band. I have been working on this project with several other people for a while. I am not here to talk about whether or not anybody should vote a particular way on September 19th. That is something that the city has brought forward. This is a solution. It may not be the solution, but it is an option, and I cannot speak to that, and I'm going to do my best to walk that line. My intent is kind of to talk about there's this amount of money on the table. People should understand, why is the city asking to build something like this? And so I'm going to talk about that. Then I'm also going to go over the fee that is in place, just because sometimes people are kind of confused about that topic, talk about kind of where it came from. And then I'm going to talk about this bond measure, just the facts. and hopefully do that in a way that is not making you think that you should vote one way or the other. If you have any questions about that when I'm done, Mr. Gifford I'm going to ask him to come up and answer those types of questions, okay? I'm going to kind of hustle along too because I got a lot of information to get through. But if you have a question, just throw it out there as we go. So I'm just going to start with kind of some history about the facility that we're in. When I first got hired there, I was told that it was a temporary building and we were going to be working on a new police station soon. And it seemed like every time the conversation happened, nobody ever questioned whether or not we needed a new police station, that we needed a new home. But like everything else in government, when you got to the topic of money, the conversation stopped. And so as we were approaching this, we were trying to find, is there something other than just going out for a bond? Is there some way of looking at this a new way, knowing for instance, there's 42 county facilities in town that do not pay taxes. Is there some way to capture their drain, for lack of a better term, on the police department? Everybody who gets arrested in Clackamas County gets out of jail in Oregon City, ends up on probation in Oregon City. There's a lot of different things that Oregon City ends up having to deal with as a city, but specifically as a police department. The other thing is we were trying to find if there was something that hadn't been looked at before. And there were a couple different cities that had used a fee. So we started looking at ways to solve things, also kind of taking a fresh look at whether or not we would stay at the facility we were at, or were there other places that we could go. A study that former, I think Conrad had it done, Chief Conrad, they had an engineering study of the current building. There is an ORS that, or is it an OAR? No, it's an ORS that requires all essential needs facilities to meet certain seismic requirements. And just perusing some of the stuff in that report, this is talking specifically about the walls in the police station that we're in. High potential for collapse in the event of a significant seismic or wind event. I was surprised to see a wind event. And since there's no definable path, and what's that talking about is the way that the walls are made. Even a minor event could cause failure. So it's not, we're not saying, this is an independent contractor that we hire to look at how sound our building is. It has nothing to do with how well it does or does not work, but just speaking specifically to the seismic aspect of the police station. One of the things I want to say too about the fee that is important. My goal when we went down this road of talking about the fee with the city, I didn't even know if we would be building a station. But what I was tired of was that I had worked for the city for a long time and we had not moved the ball down the field at all. And I thought, if nothing else, if we can get some kind of a funding structure in place so they can build a police station down the road, we've done something. We've moved the ball down the field and just didn't stop when we started talking about money. So I've just got a few pictures. I could spend a lot of time talking about the facility and how it does not meet needs. This is a year or two ago. I was looking outside and I see people in line outside of my window, which is on the corner, and they were just people waiting to go into court. And if you ever go in, today's a Tuesday, if you went up there right now, the parking lot's full, the lobby is jammed, and anybody coming in to get any police help has to work their way through everybody waiting for court. And to drive it home what that really means, to put it into a story, when I was a detective, I had somebody call and say, hey, somebody here needs to talk to a detective. I go up front, there's a lot of people there, and there's a woman who was on the verge of tears. She had been crying. She's with her husband, and they were there to tell me that they had just found out that some things had been happening to their daughter. And I look up because there's 15 people in the lobby. And that is one of the problems that we're trying to fix. If you're coming in, because you never know what comes in our lobby and everything comes in, to be able to pull somebody aside in a private room, sit down, and have a private conversation with a police officer in a safe environment and talk about what it is that you're there to talk about. If you think about those moments, which fortunately most of us never have to have, it's a big deal. The current facility, what a lot of people don't know, years ago, not that long ago, the entire city hall was there, and it was jammed. If you look at the building right now, I'm afraid to push where the laser is. If right now, so the top of the building, or the top of the box you see there, that's the front. Most people don't realize that the police department really functions just in what's yellow. We don't even use the whole building. In fact, in the middle, that largest box is actually a courtroom. When we painted some things and looked when the rest of City Hall moved out at what could we do renovation-wise to maybe use some more space, because we didn't meet those seismic requirements, we can't put up walls, we can't do any of that kind of stuff to remodel some of that space. So we did use it for, we've got code enforcement up in one corner, the lobby is there, but it's, even that space is very limited in terms of what we could do with it.
And that's not all your facility.
Well, no. Here's our other facility, is 3 double-wide trailers out back. Most people don't know that a lot of work gets done out of double-wide trailers for our police department. Detectives are in one of them. Our kind of conference room and some storage are in another one. I recently, those AC units, 2 of them went out in the 3 trailers, and the quotes were something like $10,000 a piece, and I just refused right now to spend $20,000 on those HVAC units when we don't know if we're going to be staying here. So we've got some of the plug-in kind that you stick up to the wall, not very efficient, but criminals of every kind, from homicide on down, get interviewed in double-wide trailers. So some questions. Why do we need a new police and court facility? I think it's fairly obvious. I may be crazy. If there's more questions about that, that building was never created to be a police department, ever. I one night had somebody drive by, an officer called me and said, hey Chief, the light's on, it's dark out, so I can see you in your office, and I just don't think that's very safe, because it's just a single pane of glass, and we are in different times. The court, there's a lot of reasons why the court is unsafe. We have an interview room where we've had, I want to say the most was 11 that we had in custody at one point from the municipal court, waiting to get transported to the jail. It's just, there's nothing safe about it. If the proposed bond is approved in September, would the city be allowed to raise my taxes? No, 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 no. Or fees, the same is true with fees. It is not, that bond has, voting yes does not raise anybody's taxes, does not raise anybody's fees. That is written, that will be written in the explanatory statement. If passed, how would the city pay back the bonds? We already have the revenue stream. It's coming in from the fee. That will always be in place at least until the building is paid off. Once that's paid off, it goes away. So voting yes just says to the city, go get bonds and pay it back with this money that we're already bringing in. Why didn't the city go out for a conventional bond instead of charging a fee? The way that the fee went down, I've heard that there have been a couple detractors, and the way that the fee went down is we went to the commission and said, hey, we've got this idea. Maybe instead of a bond, we look at fees. I said, let me shop this out in the community. I'll take it to every neighborhood association. We had an open house. We'll see if people think this is crazy. If they think it's crazy, I'll come tell you they think it's crazy. If they like it, I'll come tell you that they like it. There were a couple things I literally, on one hand, I remember about every conversation of somebody who did not like the idea. Now, nobody likes the government taking any money, and some people say, well, it's a fee, it's taxes, it's a shell. It's not. I get it. If the government is taking your money, whether you call it taxes or fees, it's the same thing. It's money out of your pocket. It's ripping a Band-Aid off. Our goal was to just make the Band-Aid as small as it could be. And for instance, because we're able to capture people who do not own property in the city, the average homeowner for a bond would have paid $10 a month. With a fee, it was $650. That's a pretty substantial amount of money monthly to be taking from somebody. The other thing is when we're done with the building, the fee goes away, never to come back again. Which is the next one. Why is the city putting this back on the ballot? It got voted down in November. So in November, if you ever want to meet attorneys who have no sense of humor, talk to a bond attorney, because the rules are very specific about bonds. And so that is some of the language. If you read the explanatory statement last November, it was confusing. I had officers coming to me saying, I voted for that, but I was really worried that my taxes were going up. It made no sense. What you had said it was going to be and what I read seemed like two different things. So it became pretty obvious to me that the question was not clear to the voter. Had a lot of people say, had I understood what you just said when I explained it, I would have voted differently. The other thing people wanted was to be guaranteed that they were not going to have their taxes raised. And so this attempt in September is a revenue bond instead of a general obligation bond. And so it's cleaner language. It is a little, the interest rate is a little bit higher, but it's not very much. And it allows us to ask a very clean, short, simple question that people understand. And it also gives them the guarantee that their taxes are not going to go up. Where will it be constructed? I talked about Mount Pleasant. Mount Pleasant, back at the time the school district was looking at getting rid of some properties, and we had a lot of talks with Larry and Wes, and it was pretty important to the school district that this site stay in public hands, and so we really worked out what I think was a really good deal for the city. And if you look at the site overhead, if you didn't know and somebody said, hey, put a pin in the middle of the city, you would pretty much put it right there. Our plan is to make sure that the history of the school is told, but we have an architect. Essentially, we paid architects to say, hey, should we renovate or should we build new? And without a doubt, they said you need to build new. In a nutshell, seismically, buildings don't like right angles, and if you look at an overhead of that school and the times that it's been added onto, it's a whole lot of right angles. So here's a couple pictures just of, this is a proposal, this is a concept design. It is not, we're not married to anything, but this were just kind of, and that is Lynn Avenue right here. And this, we also, so a couple things in terms of the design. One of the things we really thought people were going to say is that building. You can't tear down that building. I went to school at that building. What we heard overwhelmingly was, you can't get rid of my green space. I walk my dog there. I walk on that little thing that goes around. Overwhelmingly. And so we actually talked to our design team and said, hey, apparently green spaces are really a big deal. And even though it's not a park, it still gets used a lot. And so we also wanted to plan, not just for right now, but how do we plan for the next 50, 100 years of what this city needs? And we know that someday down the road, we're also going to need a city hall, some kind of a building that, as we outgrow that, as the city grows. So the actual plan design, this is phase 1. I didn't include phase 2. But our plan is this is where our building would be situated here. This is that current annex building. It's 7,000 square feet, and community development is getting ready to renovate and move into that space. And the way this is laid out is someday the city could use this space right here if they wanted to put a city hall, and then we would keep, if you look at West Leland Park, they've got kind of a covered patio area. We looked at whether or not this could be a basketball court or something, and then keeping it green, and something that kind of fits in the neighborhood. And the last thing I'll say, if you have any questions, I do want, and have wanted for a long time, my department wants to put Robert Libke's name on the building. I tried with the school district to find the bell that used to exist on that site, and we were unable to find it. So I've said that we might buy a bell on eBay and just etch Mount Pleasant Elementary and see if anyone knows. So that I hope kind of catches you up to where we are with the project and the need. William can answer any questions about, is this the right idea? But do you have any questions about the project, the fee, any of that?
If the bond gets approved, when would you actually start construction?
Good question. So what we would do then is we would begin a public process. We'd hire an architect, and we would begin a public process to help us design it. We need to see what the community wants. We've talked about that some with the community, but it would be a very kind of in-depth process of planning what the design would be. And I think that would probably take 6 to 9 months. And then we would look, we have a renter in there, we just extended their lease through June of 19. And so it would be sometime after then that hopefully we would be teed up to have everything designed, have a builder picked, and be ready to begin construction. Yes, sir.
What will become of the present facility that you are now in?
That is a really good question. So the school is not on the tax rolls. The place that we're at right now is not on the tax rolls. We would sell that. The sale of that would go toward the cost of our new facility and would end up back on the tax rolls. So William, you want to come up and you had a question?
If you could repeat the question.
Yes.
So that they can hear it on the video.
What do they need to do to sort of repurpose or reuse any of the existing school buildings, bricks or various other things? There's a lot of public spaces. Are they going to reuse any of that stuff?
Yeah.
Make that part of the design?
So the question was, how do you repurpose some of the bricks, or how do you kind of tell that story? How do you reuse? There are certain things, architects, they say, well, can't you just pull the walls and reuse the walls? And that this architect, I remember seeing his face as he's thinking, how do I say this? So we've had a lot of conversation about this, and again, this is all just tentative, and I think that we would have more conversation about this. What kind of rose to the top, though? One, we talked about this pathway kind of here being, you see little half walls kind of here. And what we talked about was using brick from the old, this is actually not the first Mount Pleasant Elementary School. People don't know that. It's the second one. And so we talked about along that walkway, taking pieces of brick from the old building and building kind of a history path and telling the story of the school's history. As you walk along the path coming to present day, the school's history and then other things in history was an idea that we kind of liked. The other thing, and you can kind of see it here, is right here. And Rocky Smith, our commissioner, at the time we were talking about this, and one of the things that another commissioner, Kathy Roth, had said was, you know, a lot of times when you tell a story, artists don't want to just do a concrete. They want you to think a little bit. So you don't just recreate by making an exact replica copy. But one of the things that she said, her husband had gone to that school, and there are some things that people kind of want to see concrete. The entryway to that school is the prettiest piece of that school, and And she was commenting how he had said that he will miss being able to see where he walked into school, that because it's pretty iconic, right? So what Rocky had talked about is taking and recreating that right here. Take some of that brick, and so when people pulled up there, they could remember. And the funny thing is it actually is in that location on this. It's kind of right in the same spot. You could still pull up, look, and see essentially what was kind of the front door. You'd still have that mental picture that would remind you that that had been your school. So those are just some of the ideas we came up with, but I think the public will probably have a lot more good ideas. Thanks for listening, and
You're not finished. Stay here, just in case they have some factual. I want to talk about a little bit about the softer things. On your tables, you have these cards. I hope you at least take one and look at it. We have formed a PAC, and we do have a website of Friends of OCPolice.org. We also have a very active Facebook page of, also cleverly named, Friends of OC Police. We being the PAC. There's a wall here. The PAC also has a Facebook page called Friends of OC Police. Some of the things that I think that the Chief didn't mention about the transparency issue in the design. Can you bring that picture back up, please? One of the proposed frontages here has a lot of glass on it. This is functional and symbolic of the. It lets a lot of light in, of course, but it also talks about how transparent our police force is in dealing with our public, and we want that transparency. He also mentioned the congestion in the current lobby. This building is proposed to have 2 entrances, right? One for Class A and one for Class B.
service entrance.
The distinction between a municipal bond, well, they're both municipal bonds, between a general obligation bond and a revenue bond. The revenue bond that we're proposing in September is a little bit more expensive because we have to guarantee that we have a stream of money, which we do. The revenue bond, or the general obligation bond had the possibility of raising taxes if we didn't have enough money. We will have enough money. There will not be any increases in taxes, and this fee will go away. And coupled with the fact that, as you mentioned, the fee is equally distributed amongst everyone in Oregon City who has a water meter, which includes the county, and the city is going to have to pay for their own fees. So it's a much more equitable distribution of paying for this, and it's going to cost each individual less than it would if we had a tax. There was something else that I wanted to mention. The issue of taxes. Should I tell my little story? I had a citizen ask me one time. He says, "I just hate taxes." I said, "Well, do you like the infrastructure that you get? You like a solid police force? Do you like your roads in good repair? Do you like a decent school district? Do you like all of these things?" And they say, "Yeah, but I shouldn't have to pay for it." And my response was, "Well, who do you think should pay for it?" And he said, "Let the government pay for it." Yeah, not realizing that we are the government. You know, this is our city, and we need this desperately. However, be aware that August 30th, 31st, ballots will begin mailing for this election. This is perhaps not unique. I don't know exactly the history, but it's very, very unusual to have a September election. This is a special election. It also is a single item on the ballot. I'm practicing. A single item on the ballot. That single item means that a lot of people might not vote because they say, "Oh, well, it's just one item. What difference does that make?" It's so important that we vote. And not just that we vote. That's not enough. We have to vote to pass this, but we also have to vote. We also have to tell our friends to vote. Any of you, even if you don't live in Oregon City, if you have friends that live in Oregon City, please encourage them to vote yes on 3-517. That the final election day, of course, is September 19th. But again, the ballots will be starting to come in in the 1st of September. Larry?
What type of marketing is the PAC doing?
We're what type of marketing is the PAC doing? Well, we have an active Facebook page, as I mentioned. We also have these flyers, which we're handing around to various organizations. We have been making presentations at at neighborhood associations and other organizations. And if any of you are in an organization we haven't made a presentation to you yet, please let us know. We also have, we're doing a very limited lawn sign campaign. I think we only got 50 lawn signs, and we're trying to target them on very high impact locations. So if you're on a cul-de-sac, please don't ask for a lawn sign. But if you have a piece of property where it would be appropriate for a lawn sign to be placed, we can't put them in the public byway. We can't put them we can't put them on public property. But private property, we would love to put a lawn sign up. So please contact me if you have a location for a lawn sign.
Has anybody ever thought about going door to door?
Going door to door has pluses and minuses. Number one is you'd have to know who's going to vote. Not everybody votes. You'd have to have a list of all the registered voters. You'd have to have a list of who votes in special elections. It's a very targeted audience. You don't want to go door to door to every house, and it's a limited campaign staff. We have probably less than 24 people working on the PAC itself. So that's a huge manpower thing. We are doing a direct mailing. The mailing is, I don't remember when it's scheduled to go out, pretty soon here, but there is a direct mailer as well. John?
Is it simple majority? Do they have to win by a certain amount?
Simple majority. We need 50% plus one. You think that'd be easy? We thought it was going to be easy in November, but November, it was way down ballot. There was so much going on in November that I think a lot of people voted no just because they got tired of it at the bottom of the ballot. Mike?
Is there a billboard that you have up for this?
Thank you very much. Yes, we have a billboard that was just installed a couple of days ago that's located on the corner of Washington and 7th. You can see it from Singer Hill. Yep, you can see it from that intersection across from the Battery Exchange. So, yes, Dan?
Maybe this was said earlier, so I want to get this right. Fees that I'm currently paying won't go up.
The fees that you're currently paying, correct, will not go up. As a matter of fact, they will go away.
No tax increase associated with this.
More than not just no tax. There cannot be any tax associated with this.
And so why am I voting?
You are voting to, thank you for the question. Why are you voting? You are voting because our city charter requires the permission of its citizens for all bonded indebtedness. In order for us to build this facility, we have to take on a bond. Well, we don't have to. Literally, we could wait another 19 years. Well, we don't have that much time. This has to be done by 2022. But we could be waiting for years and years and years, save up enough money to start building this facility. That's not the most efficient use of our money. The sooner we build it, the faster.
So I'm already getting my money, I just don't have to give you my
Cheaper.
permission.
It's just the permission. Yes, we have the revenue source. What we need is permission to sell those bonds. Any other questions? Kent?
Great.
Excellent questions that everybody in the audience put forward there. Obviously, William is correct. It's a very short time frame between today and September 19th. So the more we can get out there and share the importance of saying yes on this bond measure, the better. So get out there and make it happen. So with that being said, let's make this happen with the Oregon City School District. So I'm going to turn it over to Wes and your architect.
Thanks, Ken. Well, we really appreciate being here with you today. Wes Rogers, I'm the Director of Operations for the school district, so I oversee most of the non-instructional programs of the school district. And then we have David Johnson, who's with Dowa IBI Architects with us today. They're the architectural firm that Kent mentioned that's assisting the district in some of the long-term facility planning and some of the pre-bond planning that we've been doing. And the district's been pretty active in long-range facility planning for the last 2 years. Perhaps you know or don't know, if you're a parent or not, or maybe you don't peruse the district's website a lot, then you might not know that. But we've been very active in building a foundation for what are the district's facility needs for the future. And so I want to back up one slide here. So we want you to imagine the fact that some of our facilities are not very safe. If some of you might know that you can walk into some of our school buildings and you only have to go through one door and you have access to all the hallways in the school. And also just some of our sites are not fenced. And so we have a hard time managing who accesses our facilities and so forth. So if you can imagine a safer and a more secure learning environment, we want to prepare today's students for tomorrow's future. Because right now, if you're a kindergartner entering school, we're not really sure what the jobs are going to be when you graduate at 18, or what higher education is going to look like, what job training is going to look like. So we're preparing students today for a future that is fairly unknown for tomorrow. And we know that the current educational climate is fairly competitive. Lots of options for parents in today's education marketplace. And also the knowledge and skills that we need to prepare, we may not even know that we need to prepare them with those knowledge and skills. So we have to have spaces that are very adaptive. So what works today may need to be reimagined tomorrow, and the facility needs to be flexible. If you go into our schools today, you're going to see a double-loaded corridor is basically you go down a corridor and you got classrooms on the left and classrooms on the right. And those are usually cinder block walls. They don't move very easily, and it's hard to renovate them. And so we need more flexible and adaptive spaces. And school investment, when you invest in a school district's facilities, you're investing in the economic climate of the school, of the community, and you're doing a long-term benefit. Buildings built today last much longer than buildings built in the 50s. So when you build a building today, I think David would agree, you probably will get 50 good years of use out of that building. How many generations of students are going to go through that? Over 2. And so you're really building a building for the future generations of the community, those who live here now. Surprisingly, how many people I run into who went to the old high school, went to one of our middle schools, or went to one of the elementary schools. But we're really building it for tomorrow's families as well. We want our schools to be more efficient. We have not been able, because of financial reasons, been able to take advantage of any of the LED lighting technology. All of our bathroom appliances are still the old large flow appliances and fixtures. Our water bill is very significant. We know that we're missing out on some savings there. And I think the biggest thing that we're trying to build in our next possible bond renewal is the fact that our middle schools are woefully underbuilt and are very outdated. Especially if you went to Thora B. Gardner Middle School, you will notice that it was never built for 900 students. And currently we have around 875 students in that facility, and it's just not built for that. And so you have a lot of, imagine 875 junior high kids together in one building. Now, some of you probably would never get next to that building or even want to drive by it. I sure wouldn't want to go inside it sometimes because it can be a daunting task. But we really want to transform our middle school experience. Those of you who are here in the community in 2000, and we worked very hard to pass our 2000 bond and built the new high school, which is out on Beaver Creek Road. There was an immediate improvement in test scores. There was an immediate improvement in, I think, community pride in our high school. The old high school is on Jackson and 12th. So just drive up 12th sometime and take a look at when we had 1,500 to 1,600 students in that facility, and then compare it to today's facility that we built back in 2003, 2004. And now we have the ability to have quite an offering of advanced placement classes. We are able to do some things with our facility for community use that we weren't able to do before. A lot of expansive grounds up there of play fields and walking paths that the community around there use. And so it really did transform our high school experience. And we want to have that same transformation for our middle schools, both on the Gardner side of the district and on the Ogden side of the district. So what have we been doing? We'll talk a little bit more about some of our in-depth facility planning that we did in 2015, but we basically currently are under what we now are phrasing a bond renewal update. And the board has really focused on a bond renewal. Our bonds will expire in 2020, 20 years after they were issued in the year 2000. And so we have a recommended facilities master plan now that the board is continuing to discuss and study and refine. We have some recommended finance scenarios, and I'll show you how our bond rates in the Oregon City School District compare to other school district bond rates in the area. And then the board right now is leaning very heavily at doing an election in November of 2018. And then we also are starting actually, I don't know if you call this our kickoff event, but we are really starting to gear up our communication plan, and I'll share a little bit more about that. So what is our recommended facilities master plan? You can see on here, I'm not going to read these all for you. I'm a big proponent of not reading what you're seeing. I'm assuming all of you can read. And I don't think we have any visually impaired people here today. So we have the elementary. You can see some of the issues there that we're trying to improve. And then at the high school, we still have some needs there that are new needs since 2003 when we built the high school around some of those issues. And then at the middle school, basically, we are focused, after studying both middle schools, on replacing both middle schools. Especially since our middle schools were never built for the size of student bodies that we have in them. And in some cases, like Ogden, it's not located in a very friendly place. If you've ever been down Donovan Road at school dismissal time, I try it out sometime. If you want to be in gridlock, that's an interesting place. And then also, we want to take advantage of our facilities. Now, Gardner is not salvageable. I don't know if you've ever been in Gardner, but we have a lot of glass block in Gardner, and we really don't want to use glass block in a new Gardner Middle School. And some other things of issues that we would not repurpose. But at Ogden, it's a fairly good building for about a 600-student elementary school, and we would do some improvements there and then repurpose Ogden as an elementary school for future elementary growth. And then you'll see that we're talking about phases. And we're beginning to communicate that the 2000 bond was phase one of sort of transforming the school district for the next generations. And that was issued in 2000 and built the high school. And we did seismic and electrical upgrades at all the other schools. And now we're going to do phases 2 and 3. And then we'll probably have additional phases after those as we see additional needs and growth throughout the community. When I moved here in 1985 to the Oregon City, it was not the community that it is today. I think the population is more than doubled. And it's just, and we haven't, besides adding some modular buildings at some of our schools, we have not built a new school except for the high school. And so we really haven't done a lot of schools construction in the last 30 years. The next slide is about how do our taxes for school facilities compared to all of our neighboring school districts. I'm not going to be able to show you except that all of those districts to the left of us, which are most of the districts in the Portland metro area, have a higher bond rate than the Oregon City School District currently. And the two districts that are just immediately almost to our right, which are Portland School District and Lake Oswego School District, they both passed levies in May, and they're going to be jumping way ahead of us. And so our rate now is going to be one of the lowest rates for bonded indebtedness for schools in the Portland metro area. I shared before that we're going to be, right now we're looking at a bond election in November of 2018, which gives us a little over a year to do our communication plan and get the word out and do some more planning. And then you'll see there that we basically want to make sure that we're coordinated with what the city and the county are doing, because we have several schools in the unincorporated county area. We are going to be doing a lot of communications work, and then at the end, we'll be doing a lot of advertising around what's happening with the school district and how we go forward. I'm not going to read this list to you because of time, but here's some of the pre-bond activities that we've been doing. We had a very extensive long-range facility advisory committee in 2015 into 2016. We looked at everything from what kind of a classroom do we want, how do we want kids to learn, how do we want teachers to teach, what kind of facility would we need, what are some of the safety and security features we don't have, what does next generation learning look like. We did some school tours and so forth. We studied all of our facilities, just like the city has studied their current facilities. We studied ours very adequate, well, measuring educational adequacy and conditions assessment, having engineers go into all of our buildings and give us an assessment rating, as well as a cost estimate around that. We did some visioning around what would our vision for the future look like, and then we did some student groups with that as well, to have the students give us feedback about their ideal school. And then we've also worked with some community engagement activities, and you'll see some workshops that we've done there. We've been to every elementary and middle school in the school district in that year, and did some conceptual relationship diagrams of what we could do and not do on certain sites. The board approved the final LARFAC report. We call it LARFAC, Long Range Facility Advisory Committee report, in October of 2016. And then we've done 2 sets of registered voter polling in July of 2016 and just recently in March of 2017, just to get an idea of who our voter demographics are in the community or in the school district, so what some of their concerns and what their level of support would be. I'm going to let David talk real quickly about some of these specific grade level improvements that we need to have done in the district.
Hello, thank you. So as Wes mentioned, we spent this past fall going out to every elementary, middle, and the high school, talking to those populations, and really some common themes were identified. You know, first, I think in terms of conditions assessment and educational adequacy, the facilities are aging, right? They've been well maintained, but they're really not well kind of meeting the needs of current students and teachers. And you know, those are themes that we heard over and over again in talking to both the educators, students, and community members. Looking at elementary, really some things rose to the top, and we heard at each of the 7 elementary schools as we were out talking. One, safety and security. There are numerous kind of bus and parent conflicts at arrival and dismissal. And as Wes mentioned again, right, if you've ever seen either morning or afternoon, there are a number of kind of issues. That is not going as smoothly as it could. And I think that's important for a number of reasons, right? Schools are community facilities. And if it takes a long time to drop off or to collect your child, right, your access to that community facility is limited. And parents talked an awful lot about that. It was difficult to access that school. 2, there was a safety related issue there that buses have trouble getting in and out. Students are circulating between parked buses in order to get to their parents' cars. So definitely an issue relative to safety and security. It's difficult to identify where that front door is. There are no secure vestibules, right? For visitors should check in at the main office before they're granted access to the bounds of the school. That does not happen consistently, and really there is significant kind of physical impediments to that proper kind of flow and access control. If you think about recess flow of students, typically students eat at a cafeteria and then go outside to play. Oftentimes those play areas are disconnected from those cafeterias such that students are circulating around the building to access those play areas and covered play areas. In some instances, those areas are right at the front of the building, such that it's really problematic and difficult to provide the appropriate levels of security between visitors and public and students. And then further, it's difficult to kind of control that public access. Again, schools are community facilities, and if there's no easy way to allow that access, but prevent access to all parts of the building, definitely a problem. And then further, the deferred maintenance issues, roofs, mechanical systems, technology upgrades, aged buildings, definitely improvements needed there. At the high school level, many of those same deferred maintenance issues, although the high school is generally thought of as a new building, it is 12 to 14 years old. That building, the bond was in 2000. That building was constructed and completed in 2004. So it is an older facility, and there are definitely some roof technology and mechanical upgrades required there as well. Further, we've learned a lot about school security since that building was constructed, and there have been changes to patterns of use that require some kind of safety and security, maybe adjustments there as well. Further, career technical education, or CTE, is something that is sort of something that we're learning a lot about, and how to prepare all students for kind of productive lives after they leave schools, and provide pathways to success for all kids. And as you know, the needs of industry and business are rapidly changing, as is technology. So even though, again, that is a newer facility, requires some changes and updates to those spaces to better provide and prepare students for those careers. The middle school is really the area, as Wes mentioned, an area of particular need and kind of the tough nut to crack at Oregon City. You know, those schools are older. They were constructed in the 50s and 70s, right? And really, again, while they've been well maintained, they're sort of, in a way, outlived their usefulness, and that there are really some challenges in meeting the needs of teachers and students. And what we're trying to do here on kind of a high level is affect or realize the same benefits to students that the high school provided at that level, and really transforming teaching and learning. Those populations at the middle schools are much larger than they were originally intended. Those schools were planned for 500 to 600 students. Currently, they're well in excess of that. So many of those students are housed in portables, and thus are largely disconnected from the majority of kind of activities in the school, and there are associated kind of security and safety concerns with kind of shuttling kids in and out of the building between the portable and the balance of the facility. Okay. So looking separately at Ogden and Gardner, they each have their particular challenges. At Ogden, there is a lack of natural light to many primary teaching and learning facilities. Many classrooms have no windows and no natural light. Definitely not an ideal condition for students, and in particular for teachers that are spending, you know, the majority of their day in those spaces with no awareness of what's happening outside, or unable to benefit or realize the benefits of natural light. The gym and cafeteria are both undersized for that student population, and as I mentioned, all of the sixth graders are housed in those portables and are thus disconnected from the balance of the school. At Gardner, the core spaces are also undersized. Additionally, the flow of students is problematic, right? Designed for a smaller population. With a larger population, really many corridors are too narrow. There are blind corners, or intersections are really points of congestion. Additionally, there are poor sight lines, which make supervision, safety, and security problematic and difficult for administrators and teachers to provide. So one idea that came out of these meetings was the idea of converting Ogden to an elementary school. The basic premise is, while it is undersized and not meeting the needs of a middle school population, a larger middle school population, it might be really well suited to that smaller, both physically and in terms of number, elementary population. There might still be some additional new construction required to convert that, relative to making sure that all teaching and learning spaces, all classrooms have access to natural light. We may reconfigure and repurpose many of those interior spaces that do not have windows. Might be some internal renovation required to relocate the main office such that it is directly adjacent to a new secure vestibule. And then required site work to improve kind of community access to fields and grounds, and address some of those concerns that I mentioned relative to flow of parent and bus traffic, and providing those safe routes to school. Yeah?
You might want to mention what that map is called.
That is the map. The question is the map on the slides, what it represents. That is the school district boundaries for Oregon City School District.
Which are not the city limits.
Correct, which are not the city limits.
Thanks, Dave. About the boundary, we do serve all of the city of Oregon City, but the district is not made up of just the city of Oregon City. We go way out into the unincorporated areas to our south. And then we also have a small island of property that's in the Jennings Lodge, Candy Lane area, which is sort of across 99E McLaughlin from Gladstone. So we want to wrap this up. Oh, yeah. Sure.
Do you have new sites already thought of?
Yeah.
For Gardner and Ogden?
Yeah, let me answer that question here in just a few minutes. So just wrapping up some of our activities in the near future, we plan to do a kicking off of phase 2 here fairly soon in the next month or 6 weeks, and try to refine our multi-phase master plan. We have a bond development committee that we're forming that'll have a launch party and do some more needs analysis and some work on our design, as well as a project proposal list. The school board will take action on that sometime in the fall or winter. And then we've got a community engagement campaign that we're starting here very soon. And then the board will have to make a ballot decision in August of 2018. And then if they do go for November of 2018, then we'll have a bond election then. When would the bond phases be? And so this is always an important question for people. When do we start work? And elementary improvements would probably be 2 different summer packages in 2019 and 2020. We do have some very significant design issues because we are getting inside an existing building, so it does take a while to learn what's there and how we can renovate it. At the middle school improvements, it takes about 12 to 14 months to design a new middle school because we're not just designing a school, we're designing what's going to happen between the teacher and the student and a facility that supports that. The construction timeline for that is 15 to 18 months, so you can kind of see that we're probably not going to be opening up any new middle schools until about 2021. And then high school improvements, we're going to do those at the same time that we're doing summer packages for the elementary schools, hopefully get some economies of scale. And then there's our contact information for me. You feel free to email me or give me a call if you've got any other questions. That's our website where we do have some other things posted that are interesting about facilities as well as the bond renewal. And then if you'd like to be on a bond renewal email list so you can get alerts when we're doing things and having meetings, you can send me an email as well, and I'll forward that over to our communications specialist. Specifically to the question about what we're going to do at the middle schools, Gardner would be replaced on site. If you know the Gardner site, we have a very large full-size track and football field there, as well as a baseball field in the back of that. We would essentially build the new school there in phases as we abandon the old school, and then at the end, the old school area would become the new, probably a bus transportation lane, as well as be the new athletic fields and so forth for the school. For Ogden, that's a different story, and some of you might pay attention to what happens at school board meetings late at night when you have insomnia and can't get to sleep. We just signed a right of first refusal on a piece of property right next to Holcomb Elementary School. And it's 25 acres owned by the Sears family. And it's adjacent to the city limits. And if the bond election were successful, I think we have our eye on that piece of property. It would make a very good middle school site next to one of our existing elementary school sites, so we can do some partnering with the elementary school. And it's already next to city facilities and so forth. And there's a lot of development happening in that area of the city, so we'd have a pretty decent walk zone too for students to be able to walk to that school. That would be a multi-phased approach as we abandon the old school and then have that renovated. Any other questions?
Excuse me.
We're gonna have you ask your question on the microphone so we can.
Oh, wait, sorry. So that location you were talking about off Holcomb, would that be the new Gardner or the new Ogden?
That would be the new Ogden Middle School. The new Gardner Middle School would be built on the same site that it's on now. We would just do a multi-phased on-site replacement. I think Mr. Fowler has a question back there. Oh, let me go back there. Okay, go ahead.
I have two I'm Charles Gallia, and I have two questions. One is, are there any current environmental risks that need to be mitigated that could help motivate people to support the measure? And there's a state trust fund for in schools to do environmental upgrades, and there weren't a lot of school districts across the state that applied for it, and I think it's $500,000 or so. Have you pursued or looked into that?
Yeah, some feedback about some of the state funds that are available and environmental hazards for the schools. So some of that, we have applied for several state programs that have helped us fund our planning purposes, our planning efforts, as well as doing technical assistance studies of our districts, of our schools, which help identify environmental hazards. We've also applied for some reimbursement funds, grant funds related to our lead in the water testing that the district completed, and those results are all posted on the website. We don't qualify because we did so many seismic upgrades in 2000 to 2005. We are on a low priority list for seismic upgrades. So a lot of the environmental money that the state's been, I guess, offering to schools has been around seismic upgrades and so forth, because some of the schools in Oregon are like the city's police station. They will fall down in an earthquake for sure. Ours have been seismically upgraded, so we haven't been able to take advantage of those. We just completed radon testing in the school district, and I think we're just about ready to release those tests on the website. All of our sites came back okay on radon, and we don't have any radon issues in the district, so we're glad to hear that. So environmental hazards, I would probably say the biggest environmental issue we have in the district now is probably indoor air quality. There's nothing that is beyond, that's hazardous. It's not as clean or as fresh as we would like it. And so we're opening windows, we're putting in temporary air conditioners. We're not cleaning our air at all. It's just kind of recirculating, which isn't harmful to students necessarily, but it's not the best environment for indoor air quality, along with the natural light issues and so forth. That's pretty much the environmental hazard review.
Hi, Wes. Could you speak to the term of the current bond and the term of the new bond?
Yeah, so the bond was issued in 2000. We've refinanced it twice and saved the taxpayers of Oregon City School District well over $1 million, if not several $1 million, by doing those two refinancings. And then we have a tiered maturity, which means in 2017, 2018, and 2019, it's a three-tiered maturity schedule. So in 2019, 2020 is when the last bonds will be retired. So this new bond measure would actually continue that existing property tax levy that you're already paying, and it might be higher, and we might be asking for an additional investment. In 2000, we passed a property tax measure that estimated the property tax at $2 a thousand. It never got above about $1.84, and currently it's going to be this next year at $1.38. So we're already well below what the community invested in 2000, and so and we have lots of needs, many more needs than we had back in 2000, because our buildings are another 17 years old. John.
Hey, Wes, what about the other facilities that have been repurposed but aren't necessarily full-time? King, I guess, is the main one. I know there's others like that. But
we reconfigured the district. Those of you who might have been in the district, we reconfigured the district a few years ago because of budget issues and needed to reduce our operating costs. So we moved sixth graders up to the middle school, hence why our middle schools are over capacity. And then that reduced the size of our elementary population, which we then closed several elementary schools to reduce our operating costs. One of those schools we closed as an elementary school was King, which is on South End Road and Warner Parrott. And but we had the need for one of our high schools. We have two charter high schools in the district. One emphasizes CTE and STEM work, Clackamas Academy for Industrial Sciences, and that's housed at the old Jackson campus. And then at the King School, we have the Oregon City Service Learning Academy, which is more of a small project-based learning high school for kids who are not successful in a large high school. They can go over there and finish their high school years there. And in addition to that, we also have special ed students who are pre-kindergarten special ed students, and it's a program run by the Clackamas Education Service District. And so we have some students I think about 30 or 40 students in an early childhood program there. So we are using King pretty extensively. The other elementary school, those of you might know, Park Place Elementary School is still a district property. We're currently leasing that to a private, it'd be still a public charter school, but it's privately operated, the Alliance Charter Academy. So we do have some other buildings that we've held on to. We're studying those to make sure they still make sense in our long-range facility plans and where the city is building out and putting in new residences and where we need capacity. So that'll be, I'm sure, an issue we study in the next couple of years. Yeah, Easton Community School. That's right there on 7th Street where you take the corner and head up the hill and becomes Malala Avenue. That's our community center. Oregon City Community Education. We do extensive childcare programs there for the community. We also do driver's ed and some other really popular community ed programs that run out of there year round. So we still use that site pretty significantly as well. Sure, right here.
Okay,
in the
hold
front.
on, David. We're coming.
Okay. About 10 years or so ago when I was out in Lincoln County, we had a similar needs where we had a lot of schools that were beyond capacity. They had issues to be dealt with. We had a high school below sea level, completely in a tsunami inundation zone. But we were struggling to get buy-in on getting people to vote to tax themselves.
Sure.
And one of the things that seemed effective was the decision to do the construction manager general contracting rule. And they put a lot of energy trying to discuss why that was chosen, and that what it allowed the school district to do was to hopefully have some efficiencies, value engineering,
Right.
but it also allowed them to do something other than low cost bid, and the sort of values-based bidding would allow for a buy local concept. And so most of the generals that need to build something big like that don't exist in a little county like that, but they did significant work in getting local subs in. And that was a big part of people agreeing to do it because there was a real buy local.
Yeah.
Have you guys investigated any of that?
We actually built the high school in a CMGC environment. At that time, it was just a beginning CMGC environment. Robinson Construction was our contractor that they got involved early on. They involve early on a design phase so they can see economies that maybe the architects, no offense to David, but sometimes they can not see things that are happening, and a contractor can see how the building operates and can make suggestions. And you also get the benefit of having a working relationship with them that's not strictly based upon a fixed dollar amount, which says, I got, and then it becomes contentious with change orders and things like that. We recently built a transportation and maintenance facility. We used a CMGC process on that as well. My guess is we would lean that way now in this environment, I think, especially because it's a very saturated construction environment here in the greater Portland area. But yeah, we have used that and we found it fairly successful for sure. And then there was a question right behind.
I live in Park Place.
Yeah.
And there's obviously a lot going on there in terms of already annexed property developments that are already underway, plus a lot of potential for additional growth. One of the things I realize is that there's a lot of people don't understand all the planning that you're doing, and
Correct.
I mean, this answers a lot of those questions. But I still think there's like I'll say a trust issue.
Sure.
It's almost like you need another slide that would explain how you go about at a high level, how you go about trying to get an estimate of the growth in number of students or decrease in number of students, those types of things.
Appreciate that feedback. Yeah.
And because it always comes up, transportation is obviously usually number one. Schools are number two, and people don't understand.
Yeah.
They assume that if there's 100 new houses, that there's going to be a lot of.
That
new
is so
students.
true. We'll definitely put a slide in there about our demographic study and what we project as our growth patterns here in the next 5 to 10 years. Those of you who might know the Park Place area, we have Holcomb Elementary. They built 35 new homes right next to Holcomb Elementary. We have one elementary student from those 35 homes. I can't speak to this number of high school or junior high students, but our average growth for a home in Oregon City as of last year is when they build a home in Oregon City, we get less than one student per home. It's around 0.7. So when you see 100 houses being built, K-12, you might see a ratio of about 0.6 to 0.7. Depending on the size of the home, and the cost of the home usually dictates if the student is going to be in junior high or high school. And so I think that's something that we're concerned about. We don't see a lot of growth in elementary students per the number of homes that are being constructed. We do see some growth in the district-wide, but as far as elementary schools, it's a slow climb that we're seeing coming out. But I really appreciate that feedback because I think that's important information. Any other questions? Great. I'll forward the slide deck over to Kent, and so he can have that. And then just keep an eye on our website. We are beginning to post stuff there about our bond renewal efforts. And then again, please feel free to call me if you ever have a question, or your neighbor has a question, or a business associate has a question about the school district. Please call me. I can get you in touch with somebody who's got an answer. Thanks for having us.
All right. Well, thank you, Wes. Appreciate it. A lot of good information there. David, I appreciate your input as well. Obviously, this is going to be an amazing undertaking. I think it's important that the Oregon City School District continue to maintain its top caliber reputation that it definitely deserves. You've been able to retain some very, very high quality teachers. And I also like the fact that you're embracing a lot of programs with the community college to go ahead and prepare the students of today for the global marketplace of tomorrow. It seems like you really have a lot of outreach and engagement going on there, and I hope to see that continue. So, Sherry, I was wondering, I'm going to put you on the spot to kind of share with us a little bit about next month's speaker on the arts. Okay? Sherry's on our board with the Oregon City Business Alliance. Sherry who? Henson with Columbia Bank.
Good afternoon. So next month we will be inviting Cheryl Snow in, and Cheryl is the executive director of Clackamas County Arts Alliance. She was talking to me about a recent study that we just did about the economic impact of the arts in Clackamas County, and so she's going to be here to present that.
Perfect. Perfect. So, and if you remember, we always meet on the fourth Tuesday of every month, and we'll continue to keep meeting here in the Abernathy Center. Go to our website. Go to our Facebook page. We're going to try to update it as best we can of all the forums. So if any of your friends miss attending one of the events, you can go ahead and let them know that they can view it via the social media that way. We still have our special promotion going on for every person you want to bring as a guest. We will go ahead and pay for their lunch as long as you're current on your dues. That's key. But we'll be continuing that through the rest of this year. So please tell everybody about our forums. We'd like to see, now that summer's coming to an end, fill this whole room up again. But we appreciate everybody coming today, and go out and enjoy the rest of your week. Thank you.